Hello and welcome to another SSCAIT report. Today I'll be your host, Chobo Swaggins, aka Jealous from Team Liquid, and today we'll be going over recommended replays from the SSCAIT Discord, the link for which you can find in the description below. I also wanted to let you all know about the upcoming COG Conference on Games deadline of June 6th for bot author submissions. I'm looking forward to see how this competition plays out and, of course, taking a look at some of the games from the tour. Anyway, let's move on to the first game. Of course, I'll add a link to this in the description below as well. But for our first game, we have Adias spawning at the top right as the purple Terran on Benzene, and in the bottom left, we have Bereaver, the orange Protoss. So Benzene has historically been one of the most Terran favored maps, or at least the maps that are reported to be one of the most Terran favored. Um, it is a two-player map with one of the longest rush distances in the entire map pool for SSCAIT and in StarCraft in general. As you can see, they travel all the way across the 128 pixel map from the right hand side to the left hand side diagonally. It causes for a very long rush distance, and we already see a first scouting probe coming out of Bereaver very early on. This is something that we see quite often in the AI world, is the early scout. Necessary to make those reactions, willing to sacrifice the economic position that you get by scouting later in exchange for gaining information and being aware of what's coming to you. In this case, Bereaver should be quite happy to see that there's not too much craziness going on. It seems to be a very standard opening from Adias going for barracks and a what is it called? Refinery. The SCV has been sent out to chase down the probe, which it has been able to do damage here and there. And it's interesting to see when the SCV decided, okay, that's far enough from my base, I'm not too worried anymore. And then the probe decides, oh, I'm not being chased anymore. Now I'm going to go back. And the SCV has managed to let the probe slip away. The probe is going to come back for another look. This SCV looks like it's throwing down the bunker at the front. Looks like it's going to be a bunker factory expand here from Adias, a very standard and modern build. Meanwhile, Bereaver has gone for two Gateway Dragoons. Commonly you see this as a 10-21 supply Gateway build, so one Gateway at 10 out of whatever supply, the other at 21. Not too economically damaging, but also not very much, not very economical in nature as itself. And here we are seeing the four gateways, which seems to be the build of choice for the Protoss AIs in the scene right now. Four Gateway Dragoons is going to be great at applying pressure, but this defensive position from Adias is going to be quite strong as well with the bunker. SCVs available to repair. Actually preemptively pulled here, which does hurt economically, but is going to help it defend against any pressure coming in. Bereaver actually going for a Nexus behind this, which is a little bit surprising. I feel that, as you can see, the production of Dragoons can't be consistent because of the timing of the Nexus, so it is more economically inclined than a straight-up 4 Gateway Dragoon all-in, something that is possible because of the optimizations made to mining by the AI authors. You're able to get more with less effectively, and the barracks actually goes down, does not get lifted or flown away at any point. Has bought some time for siege mode and for 2 siege tanks to be out. Now there's a 3rd siege tank at the edge of the screen right there. And this has now become a position that the Terran should hold quite nicely, even against a large amount of Dragoons, given the fact that this is such a narrow choke. The barracks being destroyed is a problem, though. It is being remade here in the main. You can't add factories if you don't have a barracks, and that's an interesting aspect of this game. And you see immediately 2 factories being thrown down here. I can't seem to click on them. Being thrown down by Adias, as well as an academy coming up, most likely for the scans. We have Dragoons already posted up in a defensive position on these choke points here. I love the way that it's defending both sides of this base as it looks to take its 3rd gas, skipping the mineral only, interestingly enough. It should be also noted, though, that there are more mineral patches at this base as well, leading to greater income. Of course, the fact that it is farther away makes it a bit riskier, but at the same time, it is also a better base to have long term. Now we see cannons coming up and a Reaver. Interesting stuff coming up from the Protoss player. Generally, you don't want to invest into cannons in PvT because each cannon can be thought of as a gateway that you could have placed or possibly a Dragoon that you could have made. And they also can't go out and attack or defend against pushes. Siege tanks, of course, being quite strong. Cannons in general are just good against denying vulture harass and drop play from the Terran player. We start to see a little bit of aggression coming in. It looks like speed lots are completed now, but this is definitely not going to be enough. I love the way that Adias pushed out here and used some buildings as well to mess with the pathing of any zealots that might want to stack on top of the siege tanks. The support from vultures is not that great in numbers though, so a large zealot force could do some damage here. Seems that the rest of the vultures were sent out to do some scouting and to lay some mines around the map, and we're pushing right along into a late game scenario. Look at the amount of gateways that are coming up for Adias here. I'm sorry, for Bereaver. Adias still seems well, no, actually it's going out to 6 factories now. No, that's a science facility, I'm sorry. 5 factories, definitely not enough for a 3-base production, but at the same time the gateway count for Bereaver off 3 base isn't as high as it could be as well, which I find to be very interesting is the fact that despite the fact that income is greater and multitasking is greater for AI, they often seem to not have enough production facilities in order to hit those numbers that humans often hit. Perhaps it is also, though, a manifestation of the fact that they are so perfect that they don't need as many production facilities to have the same amount of output. As I say that, though, 2 more factories are being thrown down to get to a respectable number of 7 factories for a 3-base position. That's not bad. It's economically minded. There is the possibility of Adias taking this 3rd gas soon. One thing that does hurt Terran on this map is that it is a little bit harder to hold on to this 3rd gas than it is on other maps like Fighting Spirit. So armies tend to be very vulture heavy. Because of the fact that off 2 gases you can really only support 2 add-ons with upgrades coming in for the mech, you know, stuff like armor, attack, science vessel, and so on and so forth. So a heavy dragoon count may actually be a good choice against a composition that is heavy on vultures, but the siege tank count isn't something to be sneezed at the moment. Siege tank count is incredibly high. Let's look at the army counts here. We have 26 vultures, 13 tanks. That's in line with what we should be expecting here. Shuttle with a Reaver coming in now. Arbiter already out for the Protoss player, and we see 21 Zealots and 12 Dragoons. Despite the fact that it has that 3rd gas, it's still very Zealot heavy against a very Vulture heavy composition, which should not fare well against the Vulture heavy composition. Engaging on the bridges as well, not a good choice against Terran here. It's kind of walking into fire. There's not a lot here in it. Some army tried to come from the back, but the siege tanks were in a great defensive position. Amazing stasis here from Bereaver, catches so much of the Terran force. Might actually be 2 stasis, judging by the spread of it. 1 catching 1 SCV is not that great, but 5 tanks is a good come up here. But the army from Bereaver is incredibly low. I didn't realize that it would be like that. Okay. Let's see. And the push is on. The push is now making it to the middle of the map. The 4th base is already set up from Adias, and this is fantastic play from both AI here, as the Protoss Bereaver is taking this base now as well. Most likely, this base would generally be on the Terrans, in the Terrans' control. But in this case, the Bereaver is inclined to start taking as much of the opponent's side of the map as possible. As it's getting pushed back, great Reaver shots there, and some more engagement. Storm doing a very nicely job, but the repairs on the siege tank keep it alive for 1 more volley. Each volley doing so much damage. There was a recent post on Team Liquid showing that due to splash damage, siege tanks with each shot on a clumped unit, you know, they do something crazy like 100 or 150 damage total to the enemy army. So every shot is almost like a resource that you want to preserve. Of course, that same thing applies to Scarabs as well. Need to be careful with this mine. Oh, nope, it does take the hit. This Reaver is very close to going down, but the hold is being held. The hold is being held. The hold is there. Both armies now quite low in supply, relatively speaking. Adias on 56 workers, which is actually low for a 4-base Terran, but perhaps feeling that it has the efficiency, it's able to put more eco into put more money towards its army production and army count, making the Terran army even scarier. There's actually there's a lack of defense here. The mines are in an interesting position, but they are not covering the critical area of this bridge. And now the Reavers and Templar combined are going to make it difficult for any defensive force to come in here. SCVs are continuing to be produced out of this harassed command center, which is not something that you want to see. That's definitely going to be a hemorrhage of money. More SCVs coming in to die as well. No army coming to defend. And this heavy tech investment is showing the we see where that gas is going from that quick third gas, and now with the fourth base being on the gas and the fifth base being on the gas, Bereaver is very high on gas bank despite investing so heavily into Arbiter, Reaver, Dragoon, Templar, and this is exactly what you need that gas for, and it's paying off dividends here as Adias is pushed back onto being on two gases, and storms coming down on the mineral line are going to bring Adias back down to 38 workers now. More storms and pushing. Incredible play here from Bereaver. Very nicely done. Adias, of course, is the Saida with quotation marks around it, the famous AI that was developed in Korea with the assistance of pro gamers like Best, and Best being one of the best Protosses in the world. I don't think even he could dream of multitask and control of this nature. Look at this, 3 Reavers pushing 1 down each entryway. Arbiter trying to provide support, does get chased away by the Goliaths, but the Goliaths are taking big hits from the Reavers as well. Siege tanks weren't in enough number to actually handle both fronts of the attack, but now that the siege tank count has climbed, there is a chance to hold on to this base, but the mineral count is actually quite low here. Looks like Adias might mine out soon out of all of its bases, actually, and at that point, I'm sure that Bereaver will be quite happy with their position. 80 workers now, 66 army supply ahead, and so even though it will be difficult to bust this position, Adias is definitely hurting with 26 workers. Now 22 more monster Reaver shots harassing from the high ground, and Adias looks like it's going to go for a desperation push in this position. It knows that it can't hold on, it can't win with a mined out base, and is going to go try to take out the Protoss directly. But even gateways in the middle here, this is probably due to the fact that it's so hard to code for building placement consistently. You see that there's only, I think, like 6 or 7 gateways that were able to be fit in this main base, so gateways are being added everywhere that there's a possibility to add them. Even a gateway here, a Stargate here. So this is definitely going to help Bereaver keep its minerals down, and it is doing so. It's almost maxed out, while Adias now economy is in shambles. Only 3 workers, none of them are mining, it seems, and this looks to be all but over. Amazing game from Bereaver here. Very interesting opening, going for 4 gateways into an expansion, but perhaps maybe it was something in the scouting information that told it that the 4 gateway push would not be quite successful, so it took a step back and it went for the Nexus instead. The bunker and the siege tanks, of course, contributing to that calculation, I'm sure. Or perhaps it was just luck, but who knows. Either way, the builds were quite standard, and Bereaver showing a monstrous display here and destroying Saida here. And by the way, I have to say that I love the factory placement here from Adias. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, something like 11 factories in the main base, placed quite nicely. Depots in the back, turrets on the side. This is almost a picture-perfect SimCity. This SimCity gets an A+ from me. Unfortunately, it was not enough to stop the monstrous tech and production of Bereaver. The expansion pattern being very human-like, although it should be noted that by this point, the Protoss may have already been on way more bases. It would have definitely taken these bases and this base as a human player, but taking the Tyrant's old fort is nice as well. We'll take the gas from there, as we see the bank of gas going up to 7,000 minerals at 4,500, and with that, the game is over. Very nicely done. Let's move on to the next game. Here we have a human player from the Schnell ladder. The Schnell ladder, of course, being the StarCraft human NAI ladder, where you get the opportunity to play against a lot of the top AIs that you've seen in these broadcasts. I'll be putting a link to in the description below. One of those top AIs that we've discussed and seen in tournament play recently is Banana Brain, spawning here at the top left of Circuit Breakers as the red Protoss, and in the bottom left we have TF Agatha. Brown Zerg, I'm not familiar with their name. I feel like I've seen it before, but that might be from the fact that I've been browsing replays on the Schnell website. Sorry, brief water break. So a fast scout in this situation is actually quite common in this matchup, going for a forge at the front, and Banana Brain is going to scout the human on its first attempt. Is going to see that there is no spawning pool. Looks like there is going to be a hatchery going to be thrown down at 300 minerals, and is going to be confirmed by Banana Brain almost immediately as well. This kind of economic opening with a 12 hatch means that the Protoss can actually delay adding cannons in the natural and can go for a Nexus first. And in some cases, in some maps, you can actually go for Nexus Gateway before adding those cannons. Spawning pool now coming up as expected after the first hatchery, and actually a quick gas now. This is something that is slightly unusual. Normally, you would see the third hatchery being thrown down before the gas, so this might be something that Banana Brain should start worrying about. As expected, the gateway is being thrown down after the Nexus before any cannons are added. One cannon being added right now. Keeping tabs on the larva is actually a great way of ensuring that your cannon timing is appropriate and the cannon amount is appropriate. When the Zergs do not save larvae for Zerglings in anticipation of the spawning pool finishing, you know that they're most likely going to only make 2 or so. Should be noted though that there's only 2 Zerglings on, I'm sorry, 2 drones on gas on the layer right now. This is somewhat unusual, third one being added now. I'm not sure if that's a mistake or a calculated move. There are a lot of builds that do require you, or at least allow you to take a drone off of gas temporarily during the layer timing because you are so stretched thin when going for an early layer build. This seems to be some form of 2.5 hatch layer. 2.5 hatch, of course, isn't, you can't have half of a hatchery, but it refers to the fact that your layer starts as the third hatchery is coming up, as opposed to more standard variants which have 3 hatcheries before the layer starts. In this case, it looks like it is going to be a Spire play, but only 1 on gas, so that tells me that it's most likely going to be used for Scourge instead of Mutalisks, which is, again, an interesting choice, especially given the fact that we know, maybe Agatha doesn't know, but from experience, Banana Brain doesn't really make Corsairs in this matchup, and a lot of AI don't. Part of the reason why is because AI AI Mutalisks are so great at splitting up, which really mitigates the effectiveness of the splash damage that Corsairs do. As we see here, Banana Brain is actually indeed going for that heavy Dragoon play off of 2 bases that we've seen quite commonly from PvZ and in PvT, to be quite honest with you. It is indeed going to be Scourge. The Scourge are going to be useful for scouting at least, but they're not going to contribute much more. Investing that much gas into 6 Scourge there is maybe not optimal in this situation, and here comes the push from the Dragoons. The hatchery wall at the front is in danger of being pushed down. This is something that is known about the Dragoon openings and Mass Dragoon plays and push styles from PvZ. It was kind of a reaction to the fact that SimCity from Zerg was really strong in the wake of the Bisu build, and the reactions to the Bisu build called for making SimCities with a hatchery, sometimes a Hydro Den or an Evo chamber, and Sunkens behind. This made it very difficult to apply any pressure with Zealots, but Dragoons are able to pick that wall apart by standing outside the range of the Sunkens and any defensive structures. And as we see here, one of the hatcheries did already go down, which is a pretty big hit for TF Agatha, who is clearly a pretty strong player, you know, hovering at 200 to 300 APM throughout all of this. Behind this, Banana Brain is taking a 3rd and 4th base. Very nicely done. It seems to be pure Zergling play, actually, from Agatha here, which is an interesting choice, especially considering the fact that we're not yet in Hive Tech. Hive Tech is usually where you would see someone transition from the Hydraling into pure Zergling, but so far it is working out. The Dragoons aren't able to stay in significant numbers to fight and dance away from the Zerglings. Zerglings now coming out in force. Yeah, this is exactly the situation where Zerglings are going to perform quite nicely. It's when the when the Dragoons are spread out, they're not able to dance away and pick off Zerglings one by one. And the Zealots are not doing a great job of body blocking for the Dragoons either. I'm kind of surprised by the lack of production. We now are seeing those first few Sayers coming out of Banana Brain, which I'm surprised to see as well. So the Scourge possibly were a good decision there. 5 bases now coming up for Banana Brain. It's the gateway count that I think is really hampering this situation. I feel like it would have done well to get up to about 8 gateways off of 2 bases if it really wanted to seal the deal. I think that Agatha was in a whole lot of trouble when that hatchery went down. But by trying to go for an expansion approach after that initial pressure, Banana Brain sort of hampered and lost its ability to finish off the game in that situation. Now these Zerglings are going to run around and be annoying most likely, but it should be noted that there is still a heavy lack of static structures here. First Hydralisks now coming out. I wonder if they're going to be used for lurkers or not. Zerglings are going to come out in numbers from the amount of hatcheries that are here. Nice catch here on the high ground, going to surround some of the Dragoons. the Dragoons are going to go down because they weren't able to stay together. The reinforcements come in a little bit too late. Do we have a hive tech yet? Still no. And I'm curious about the upgrades as well. It looks like we have 1 attack, 1 armor, and oh, just now +1 coming up for the Protoss player. Of course, it doesn't matter as much when you're going for such a heavy Dragoon count, but the Zealots are going to perform terribly against these Zerglings in these situations. You definitely always want to be 1 attack upgrade ahead of the armor upgrade of the Zerg player when you're going for Zealots versus Zerglings. The reason for that is it takes 1 less hit from the Zealots to kill the Zerglings, but again, the macro could be the increase in macro should be able to mitigate this. A Protoss on 5 bases against 4 base Zerg should be feeling themselves in a pretty good position, and Agatha unfortunately is starting to lose ground here. Losing these hatcheries is more important than losing the actual base itself. The access to minerals is not that significant in this situation because Zerglings are so cheap, but it looks like Agatha has GG'd out. Banana Brain barely pulling back from a difficult situation in the middle of the game, barely able to produce enough units to apply the pressure and keep Agatha penned in while it established such a formidable economic presence. I still think that, especially for human players, I would definitely suggest if you're going for this Dragoon heavy style of play to try to go for a 2-base option with more gateway and more Dragoon investment. As you saw here, the pressure applying to the front was able to take down 1 hatchery. It's easy to imagine that with additional gateways you could take down both forward hatcheries and in fact possibly incapacitate the entire natural as well, delaying your expansions a little bit in order to deal more of a punch with your Dragoon investment, because Dragoons frankly are not the best unit in PvZ, but of course in AI world and AI hands, anything is possible, it seems. I mean, that was very well done there by Banana Brain. And TF Agatha, of course, clearly no slouch of a player, had high APM and good knowledge of the game throughout. Maybe just not quite used to the way that Banana Brain plays because of the early commitment to Scourge there. I am going to be looking more closely at games from this player, though. I can tell you that much because it's one of the better players that I've seen playing in Schnell so far. Anyway, moving on, we now have Steamhammer playing against Mr. Quan, and I believe that this is something that happened on Schnell as well, and I can tell that already by the split where one of the probes was directed to the wrong. Yep, and there we go again, another small indicator of the fact that it is indeed a human player from the Schnell ladder. Mr. Quan spawning as the yellow Protoss at the top left of Fighting Spirit, and in the top right we have Steamhammer as the purple Zerg. And again, we're going to see an early pylon. This placement isn't quite standard. Kind of leads me to believe that maybe Mr. Quan is not as experienced as Agatha, given the previous game, but it is an inverse of what we saw before. It's going to be Forge Gateway most likely at the front here. This Forge is a little bit too far forward for my liking. Normally what you would want to do is place a pylon here, Forge here, Gateway here. This provides better defense against Zergling openings, and this Forge being so far forward makes it a little bit susceptible to bridge pressure, which is harder to engage against, but it's still a sound positioning, and it's actually a little bit of a greed from Mr. Quan there to not scout after placing that first pylon. It is going to see the fact it is going to scout first, thankfully, and see that the hatchery is coming up. It's going to see 3 eggs after the spawning pool, which indicates that it's going to be 6 Zerglings. And as you can see, Mr. Quan has actually stopped production of probes in order to place down that cannon. Now is going to try to throw down a gateway to complete the SimCity. I don't think it's going to be in time. The Zerglings might be able to run in here. Once they get into number, they should be able to run around. In this situation, a human player should pull probes in order to hold this position and prevent the Zerglings from running in. Mr. Quan looks to be lucked out, as Steamhammer does not seem intent to run by at this moment, is going to go for that gas after starting the third hatchery at its natural third. Adding another cannon is Mr. Quan. This is possibly a good idea now, adding 2 cannons, and it should be noted that Mr. Quan is playing blind as well. It's not keeping tabs on the production of Steamhammer, so it's playing exceptionally defensively here. It actually still hasn't added a gas. It's trying to, Mr. Quan, sorry, I keep saying it, but it's most likely a person. They're adding cannons here to this third base to take a sneak third base. It's an interesting way to approach the game, but it is susceptible to tech switches from the Zerg player. Hydra Bust, of course, coming into play here. Hydra Bust at the front before Templar, Storm, or Reaver defense could be quite fatal, because even if you have a fast third base for yourself, it's not going to start paying dividends for quite a while. If we look here, there's already 4 or 5 cannons and a pylon, so 5 cannons times 250, 1250, plus a pylon 1350, and then a nexus would be 1750. So that's 1750 minerals invested into this base before getting any returns yet. Another cannon coming up here, and more cannons over here. Cybernetics Core completing the wall. Interesting choice here. It's not going to allow for any units to come out, but we're still not seeing any gas. More cannons being thrown down in the main mineral line now as well, to prevent any Mutalisk harassment from coming in. It's at a good timing, actually. At 6 minutes, adding those cannons is useful, but it is going to be Hydralisk play from Steamhammer, and it looks to be a quick Hive play as well, with the Queen's Nest already being thrown down. I really like this approach. Dark Swarm with Zerglings is going to basically be everything that Mr. Quan has at this moment, especially given the fact, again, that it's delayed its tech and it has no army production. It focused solely on investing into defensive structures to justify this fast hidden third base. Zerglings are not going to be able to break in here on their own, and I think Steamhammer is now aware of that after trying to push in there with one of them. Looks like the Zealot was looking to bait, perhaps, or maybe it itself was baited by the Zerglings. More cannons being thrown down now defensively. We're going for the turtle and prey approach, it seems. Meanwhile, Steamhammer has taken a 4th base. Is continuing to hemorrhage a couple units. This could be a problem for Steamhammer. I don't understand. Well, maybe Steamhammer is thinking, how should I put this? Alright, so the situation is not going to get better at any time soon for Steamhammer to take an engagement here. The amount of cannons that it has seen is significant enough that it knows, or should know, that this army is not going to be able to puncture that. So I'm surprised that it continues to run in. Maybe it's doing so to keep tabs on the army production, which we see is actually quite minimal. There's no real army being produced here. I'm expecting possibly some sort of Stargate shenanigans from Mr. Quan, possibly going straight into carrier. And look at this ballsy probe transfer. That's hilarious to me. At least the Zerg should now be officially aware of an expansion here if it's keeping tabs on that. Zerg now up to 5 bases, and this kind of demonstrates the weakness of investing so heavily into defenses and a 3rd base. Despite achieving that 3rd base, Mr. Quan is going to be economically disadvantaged compared to Steamhammer, who's actually ahead in workers, ahead in mineral lines, and Mr. Quan is floating a lot of money, but that's because it is just now going to start going into that carrier scenes production, throwing down like 6 or 7 Stargates now total. And it is spinning the probably going to be +1 air attack, yes, and it is getting the air, no, not air, the plasma shields, which apply to all Protoss units and buildings. So that's a good combination of upgrades to have. I'm surprised not to see a second Cybernetics Core added in order to oh, it's going to be Mass Scouts. Yes, this is going to be a meme build. Mass Scouts Scouts are known as one of the worst units in Brood War. However, that is generally because they're expensive. They take up 3 supply. And they take a long time to produce. However, in great numbers, Scouts are fantastic. They do a ton of damage when microed like Mutalisks, and look at this defense here from Mr. Quan. The cannons now showing their necessity and why they're being used, and actually Defilers now coming in with the Plague. The Defilers with Plague is going to be a very devastating combination against the Scouts, actually, especially if combined with possibly Ensnare, could lead to the death of many Scouts. Ultralisks being out now as well. It seems that the Zerg is struggling to cope with the wall, but now is starting to bust through. This is notably only these two cannons are the last thing that's holding the front here. Without this forge, I don't think there's a backup forge. No, there is now. The backup forge is back there, and it is upgrading the second round of shield upgrades. Ooh, Scouts were not paying attention, so get Scourge down a little bit. And now Queens are in play. I hope to see that ensnare on the Scouts at some point. Dark Swarm now going to take down this natural. This is looking to be worse and worse for Mr. Quan here. Falling down to below 50 workers, trying desperately to transfer these probes. They're going to get taken down as they run away. The main base here is still defended. It has plenty of cannons here, and pushing uphill will be difficult, but there's nothing to hold the ramp and force army to not engage here. Sometimes you might want to see some Dark Templar on the ramp, for example, to force a interesting situation. But now the scouts are not being really micro to their full potential here. A lot of them did go down, but also a lot of Zerg units went down as well. However, still not supply capped is Steamhammer. 123 out of 170, so those Overlord and Mule's Colossus are not going to be that devastating. And at the same time, Steamhammer on so many bases and has used that burrowing here. I know from my own personal experience that that Sarah Reaver is incredibly difficult against Steamhammer because of the fact that the units burrow when you show up to try to harass them, and the Scourge are going to start chasing down the scouts as well. Looks like good micro there from Mr. Quan to take him out though. Losing all of his tech though notably, and it's actually going to be a full commitment into Reavers. There's not going to be any more scouts added. Looks like there's about, let's see what the count is, 14 scouts. That's make that 13 scouts, almost a control group, and they're not really being microed all that effectively. As you can see, they're periodically being taken. The attention is not being paid to them by Mr. Quan, perhaps a slightly slower player than Agatha in the previous game. Scouts now going to try to harass this base, but again, they're not capable of really doing anything besides taking down hatcheries, which is of course still a useful approach. I'm surprised to see that the Devourers and the Hydralisks are not engaging here. The use of Devourers, Queens, and Defilers would be a nice way. And ooh, nice scout micro there. It doesn't seem to be the fact they don't seem to be stacking their scouts, unfortunately. So in this case, the stack would help in this micro that is require this patrol back micro against the Scourge, but unfortunately it is not being utilized for that. Scouts are going to go and try to apply pressure down here. Reavers are being made. There's 4 defensive Reavers. They're trying to hold this ramp, and again, I know from personal experience that this approach it seems to work for a little bit against Steamhammer, and then all of a sudden it doesn't when Steamhammer starts pumping those massive numbers and pushing with Plague and Snare, Swarm. It's really a sight to behold, and I feel that Mr. Quan now is feeling the pressure, trying to take down more hatcheries, but Steamhammer still on healthy 3 mineral lines and remaking hatcheries that it has lost. Now pushing with that combination of Dark Swarms against the Reavers. The Reavers are, of course, going to be great in this position, but they are going down slowly but surely. And Snare now on these scouts. I'm going to move this temporarily. Snare, Plague, and this is exactly what we love to see. Well, unless you're Mr. Quan or a Protoss player, this push is going to most likely break this front position of cannons, and Mr. Quan should be running low on minerals inside their only base at this time as well, and with Ultras soaking up some of the hits, Zerglings are going to slowly but surely take down these cannons and Reavers. Reavers are in a significant number now, but I don't see any way out now for Mr. Quan, unfortunately. Mr. Quan now just down to 3 scouts here. I'm going to move this a little bit one more time. Oh, I keep doing that. There we go. Alright, so let's see the hold attempt here. The shuttle, it looks like shuttles are going out to try to take out a base, maybe trying to take a base for themselves. They are going to get seen by this Zergling here, and they're being tracked by the Zerglings, it seems. It looks like it might be an attempt to do damage, perhaps, but in the meantime, the bases are now going down. Queens, Guardians, the whole menagerie of Zerg units is going to take down the last buildings from Mr. Quan. It was a valiant attempt, Mr. Quan. I know the feeling. I've attempted similar things against Steamhammer and gotten punished for it before. After all, going for that the greedy third base did not pay off in this situation, and I feel like it might have been a rude awakening for Mr. Quan. It was for me. I recently lost like 600 or 700 points on Schnail because of the fact that it did some sort of according to Sanko, there are games that, you know, like the winner is not determined or whatever, and because the game is still in beta, right? You know, you get punished basically for when there's an issue and you don't get the points for it, or maybe you were wrongly awarded points at some point. So I lost like 600 points, and I had to start from the bottom of AIs, and I was crushing it through it until I got to Steamhammer, and Steamhammer is the first AI to take a game off of me as I was going back up the ladder ranks. And it was in a game that was very similar to this, and it was a rude awakening for me. It told me, okay, time to shape up and start actually taking this seriously, because Steamhammer is no joke. Anyway, moving on to our next game, we are here with Pineapple Cactus against Soaren Klet, 2 AIs that we have seen on this channel before. Pineapple Cactus spawning as the White Zerg at the top right of Jade. Sower and Klet as the yellow, I'm sorry, yellow orange Terran at the bottom right, also on Jade. Um, these AI are sort of closer to the middle of the pack in terms of AI strength, but what happens in those with AI at that level, excuse me, is that we get to see some interesting things, things that you may not often see. For example, Hans Bredberg is a great example of that. The bio nuke ghost play, in I think all matchups against Zerg, against Protoss. That should be interesting to see what Hans Bredberg does in TVT, to be honest with you. But either way, let's focus on this game for now. We have a barracks coming in the main base, a somewhat later scout than you would normally anticipate in a TVZ, even a human one, and especially an AI one. But it's not going to hurt too badly, considering the fact that Pineapple Cactus has gone for the 12 hatch build and is now going to go for a 13 pool. I anticipate. Actually, no, it's up to 14 supply now. Going to go for maybe a third hatchery. Ooh, this is not something I expected. This is a known build, going for 3 hatcheries before spawning pool. Usually, you don't make 16 drones to do it. Interesting use of a drone here, possibly to try to deny scouting and prevent them from seeing the fact that it has gone for such a heavy investment into economy and no army. The first Overlord is in danger of going down now. SCVs and Marines are going to push out here and going to scare that drone away and going to take down this Overlord as well. 2 SCVs continue to chase down this drone, but no army from Pineapple Cactus to take down. Actually, Pineapple Cactus didn't even make that third hatchery. I'm quite surprised by that. Um, it was just a really late pool. The SCVs, after having destroyed the drone, are going to go take their gift of Vespine gas back to the main base of Soar and Klet. Soar and Klet adding a factory behind the bunker. No expand in this situation, which is interesting to say the least. However, with 400 minerals, could think about adding a command center soon. I'm anticipating perhaps Vulture play out of this, and Vulture play could be decent, but the Sunken should be up in time, considering the fact that the Terran player opted to go for the Machine Shop add-on before getting the Vulture itself. Research coming in now is Siege Mode, actually. Interesting choice. Generally, you don't see Siege Mode unless you have confirmed that it's going to be some sort of 3-hatch Hydra play, which is quite rare in ZVT, but it has been known to work in some situations as a one-off cheese. In this case, we see Pineapple Cactus has finally taken their third hatch, still floating quite a number of resources. Not sure why that was the choice to delay the pool by so much. Perhaps there was an issue. Maybe that one of those drones was intended to expand but ran into the Terran player here. 1 Vulture, 1 Siege Tank holding the line here. A second Siege Tank is out. 2 factories and a starport. Actually, still no expansion, but with 2 factories and a starport, that's about the most that you can produce off of one base consistently, given the fact that there is that gas requirement and the fact that Vultures produce quite fast. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of the starport. I would have expected actually a Wraith to come out first before any sort of dropship or anything similar. Vultures alone are going to fare well against Zerglings, but with the addition of Hydras and the climbing number, Vultures are not that great against it, but Mines are going to help zone out this position. The lair is already done, so I hope to see perhaps speed, Overlord speed coming in shortly to keep tabs on those mines. Lurker actually tech coming in into the Zerg's tech right now. Oh, that was a big boom, but a lot of mines went down as well. Lurkers are not going to fare that well against mech. They're not a great combination. There is already ComSat scanning. Looks like the science facility is on the way up as well, which is going to be a major boon to any defense, not having to rely on having a solitary ComSat scanner, though the second expansion for the Terran player is coming up. Meanwhile, Pineapple Cactus still on 3 bases. Actually, no, take that back. He has added the 4th base here. Not a lot of defenses on these bases. Still floating a lot of money. Perhaps could benefit from adding more macro hatcheries, and as I say that, they do so. The Spire now complete. Spire could be quite interesting in this situation. There's only a Wraith and now being added a couple of Goliaths into the mix. No turrets in the main base, so a strong Mutalisk can count. As we see here, production of Mutalisks is climbing. Could actually be quite problematic for the Terran player here. Factories, there's only 2 of them, and the starport. 2 factories, 1 starport, production of Wraiths and Goliaths should be barely able to keep up, actually maybe not even, against a 4 hatchery straight Mutalisk production. Considering the fact that there is such a heavy gas bank, Pineapple Cactus can do so. Seems to be more focused on making drones and hatcheries and going into hive tech at the moment, though. And this is perhaps one of the, I would say, maybe major weaknesses of AI is not recognizing the winning solution in a situation. You know that there you have. I believe that humans have to code for those situations where it's like, I see that my opponent doesn't have much anti-air, so I should just make a bunch of mutalisks and win that way. And I feel that that's something that's very difficult to code for, and something that is very situational, even beyond that. So it's something that may seem very common sense and easy to us, and oh, another big mind hit there. But for AI, it's something that, of course, they can't think of it themselves. It has to be something that's coded in, and it's difficult to code for something like that, I'm sure. Now we're starting, if we look at the minimap, we see a lot of movement from the Zerg player. With the 60 worker economy, it's able to produce quite a lot, and now we're seeing Defilers, Lurkers, Zerglings, Hydralisks being produced, a little bit of everything from the Zerg player. Meanwhile, Soar and Klet, despite the low factory count, has amassed quite a scary mech force here. Army supplies are close to equal. Soar and Klet being advanced, 10 supply ahead is to be expected in this situation. Cloaked Wraiths now running around. I'm surprised to not see any, any Overlord speed here, but it looks like there was a massive amount of Zergling losses here, perhaps to a mine, perhaps due to the sheer number of siege tanks, but the army supplies are staying quite constant thanks to the production. Third base now coming up for Sora and Klet is going to get spotted by the Mutalisks, and if cancel is forced, Defilers are running right on top of the mech force. Not exactly how you want to use them. You want to cover this area, and Dark Swarms run in with Zerglings. Perhaps Plague would be useful in this situation as well, and we're seeing more and more Defilers being thrown into the mix. Still floating quite a lot of money is Pineapple Cactus. Could perhaps benefit from adding some more macro hatcheries. There are a lot of... that was like a drive-by consume. You saw that the Zerglings were running by. It's like... anyway, but the sheer numbers of Zerg units are proving difficult to handle for Sora and Klet. Sora and Klet has been on 2 base for a very long time. The factory count, as mentioned before, is quite low, so as a result, there's not going to be a consistent amount of production that is able to handle the numbers of Zerg units that are coming in. Mutalisks now are going to be able to pick off these siege tanks with ease. The Dark Swarms are protecting some of the Lurkers. That's the only way in which that they're really effective against mech, and also when mech is in lower numbers, of course, as well. Battle Cruisers now out for Sora and Klet. This is the little bit of everything build from both players, it seems. Problematic positions for the Dark Swarms. The Zerglings running in could do some damage. I'm assuming that these are Defilers because they have, at least this one has an energy, so that's an interesting play there. No Science Vessels out to find these units. More Dark Swarms here would be useful. Looks like it's building up the energy to do so. Still doesn't, actually didn't need to use it. Now it looks, oh, did it? I thought it was going to consume that Lurker. I was scared for a moment, but no, that's not going to be the case. Just a stream of Zerg units coming into Sora and Klet's main, streaming from all sides of the map. And yeah, this game is surely soon to be over as the main is almost mined out. The natural is falling. More Dark Swarms, very nicely done here by Pineapple Cactus after a somewhat shaky start in the early game, proving to be too much to handle for Sora and Klet. You always love to see this utilization of Dark Swarm and spells in general in the AI world. It shows a real, dedication to late game planning in this case and late game play. Something that's discussed quite frequently in the SSCAIT Discord is that you get more returns from focusing on the first 5 minutes of the game. Preventing yourself from dying, or in exchange also trying to win in the first 5 minutes. Why bother learning how to do consume and Dark Swarm strategies if you can win in 5 minutes with a Zergling Rush, And in this case, it shows that Pineapple Cactus's author has invested the time and effort to develop that late game plan. It's really awesome to see. So thank you for that. And we're going to move into our last game of the day. It's going to be Corona, spawning in the top left of, yet again, Jade as the white Zerg, and it's going to be against Monster, the infamous teal Zerg at the bottom right. Well, infamous Zerg that is also teal in this case. The finalist, second place finisher from the most recent SSCAI tournament proper, falling to Stardust in the finals and going toe-to-toe with them in the show match. You can find it in our recent videos. It was broadcasted maybe like 2 months ago or a month ago. where there was a best of 9 between Monster and Stardust, and it went down to the wire. Definitely recommend you guys check that out. So Monster, definitely a force to be reckoned with. Krona, I'm not as familiar with this AI, but as ZVZ, anything can happen. There's a long-running meme slash joke in the foreign StarCraft community that ZVZ is like a back alley knife fight where two people are just constantly trying to stab each other and not get stabbed. It's high octane, and in the AI world with amazing micro and multitasking, it should make for a crazy game. We're already seeing a difference in the approach to the game from the two AI. Monster going for a much more standard approach, going for one hatchery, and as I say that, they go straight for a one hatch layer, which is not standard. Definitely a risky build. Meanwhile, we see Krona going for two hatchery Zergling production, it seems. Looks like it is going to get enough gas in order to get the Zergling speed upgrade, and is going to then invest fully into Zergling aggression. Zerglings from Monster have made a nice concave here, are trying to figure it out little by little. Concaves like this are really crucial. If for maximizing the effective surface area of your Zerglings against a greater number that might be pushing in, and in this case that will be the situation given the fact that it's going to be two hatchery production of Zerglings all in, just 7 workers. Looks like Zergling speed has to have been researched. Let me see, Zergling speed has been is on the way, actually, I'm sorry, for Krona. Monster already having it and already going up to the one hatch Mutalisk production soon with the Spire. This is actually an interaction that happens relatively commonly in ZVZ. There have been some famous games with this situation where one one Zerg invests very heavily into tech and tries to get the fastest Mutalisk possible to end the game that way, whereas the other player invests purely into Zerglings and tries to end the game that way. And now we're sensing that the Zergling count is going to be enough to bust down. Krona is funneling army into Monster Zerglings. The Zerglings are trying to do their best to try to hold off, but unfortunately, no, there was not enough time, not enough count, and this is exactly what the situation is. Actually, now, Monster not having enough money to even make another drone, it seems, is producing its last Mutalisk and is going to try to hold on with just the Mutalisks. The Mutalisks are going for the counterattack now. There's no defenses against Mutalisks here. In this situation, the Mutalisk, unfortunately, are not going to do enough damage to the opponent as quickly as the Zerglings are going to do damage here, but at the same time, Zerglings can attack the Mutalisks can attack the Zerglings. It's going to come down to who has more HP, who can survive longer, and actually wasting Zergling time attacking the larva here is not a good call. The Spire goes down, the pool is looking to come down next, more Zerglings streaming in. The Mutalisks are actually chasing the Zerglings now. There's not going to be any more production of military units for either either AI. The last pool is here. There's going to be a couple more Zerglings that are going to come in. No, they didn't manage to kill off the spawning pool, and with a barely holding on, Monster takes this W over Krona. After splitting, it was a great calculation, actually, in order to leave one Mutalisk back here to take down the Zerglings that come in, send a couple Mutalisks out here to pick off the drones to stem the tide of Zerglings, and yeah, just it was a really heads-up play. I don't think I would have had the wherewithal to play it that way. In pro games, there has been a lot of shenanigans where, like, you hide some Zerglings in the main base of the Zerg, so when the Mutalisks fly away, you run in and you harass them a little bit more. But overall, crazy game. Really interesting to see how that played out. I want to just go back real quickly just to see how, yeah, this is the moment where the Mutalisk split away. Looks like there's just one Mutalisk here trying to take down the Zerglings little by little. And these Mutalisks are chasing down the Zerglings. They take a passing shot at these Zerglings on the way there, just helping out little by little, and is now going to focus on taking down the drones so that no more Zerglings can be produced. And yeah, the last round of Zerglings is being made here. The two Mutalisks, they take out the last drones. Indeed, and then they're going to go, and now they're going to try to chase down the Zerglings as they come out. Nice usage of the airspace being shorter there than the ramp. We're trying to chase down these Zerglings, but speed Zerglings I see to be actually faster than Mutalisk, and now with the numbers that there are, that last Mutalisk actually paying off nicely here, able to finish off the last Zerglings before the spawning pool can go down. Really neck and neck situation here. Really nicely done there from Monster and Krona as well. Well, Anyway, that brings us to the end of our broadcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I had a fantastic time bringing you guys these games. If you guys have any comments, questions, you can of course post them on the YouTube page below, or you can join the SSCAIT Discord, the link for which is in the description. Come join the community. You can recommend replays, see them before they come out, join discussions about AI and many other interesting topics. Yeah, this has been Chobo Swaggins, aka Jealous on Team Liquid. I wish you guys a wonderful week. I hope you guys are healthy, happy, stay positive, and yeah, take care, everyone. See you guys next time.